At what point in your career did you go without work for, was it a year? Okay. What happened?
Yeah, that was in 2009. And that contact, that one connection that I had made helped me get that first show. But I didn't have like a huge Rolodex of people that I knew in the industry. So it was really challenging to book another job because, as from a graphic designer standpoint, you really need to know people. Once you get into the union, there is an availability list that you can put yourself on, and you can get some jobs from your name being on the availability list. But people are only going to that list until they've exhausted their list of people they know. So it's so much about who you know, and I just didn't know enough people yet. My pool was so small. So I had, it was like the worst year of my life because it was also the recession. And so I couldn't even get a waitressing job. Like, I remember this one day where I saw Craigslist posting for a waitress interview, a server interview. And I got in my car right away and drove right over, and there were already like 10 people in line, and they were only taking one person. So that was really challenging too. And like, I really, even now, I try to get better, but I tend to tie my self-worth to how much money I have. And so when I like couldn't even make a living as like getting a server job or something like that, or any kind of side job, and this was also before Uber and Lyft existed. I couldn't drive for Instacart. I couldn't do those things. I couldn't be a Postmates person. And so that was really hard for me too. So not only like struggling to find the work, but then tying my worth to that and feeling so unworthy of success or anything that I wanted. That was really hard.
How well do you remember the depression that you faced?
Oh gosh. I very well, because I still experience it all the time. Like I think I'm prone to depression. I call it situational depression because it usually comes from a situation. So something happens to cause me to be depressed. I don't normally feel it just to feel it with no trigger. So I recall it very well because I felt it again many times since then. But it was just a really pivotal time in my life. Like I remember it so well. So well. I can really connect, to those feelings and, what I tried to do, just all of the things that I did. And even though it was almost 13 years ago at this point, 12 years ago, I still remember it very clearly.
Yeah, it was a really rough time for a lot of people.
Yes, it was. And I mean, thank God I didn't have kids or didn't have a home. So many people lost their homes and, much worse than, fortunately I was able to stay afloat. And I had 2 roommates at the time. And so I was able to still stay in LA, which is amazing. It could have been much worse, but yeah, it was a tough time.
How were you able to book a job at the end of all that?
I asked for help. It was so hard. My cousin told me a story. It's a short story. I can tell it quickly. And people probably heard it before. I forget all the details, but essentially there was a man in his house and it started raining. And as the rain came down, it didn't stop and it started to flood. And he was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to be okay? And he just kept praying to God, God, save me. I will be okay. Please help me, God. And the flood kept growing and the rain was getting worse. And so he goes to the upstairs in his house so he can get to the next level because it's starting to come into his house. And he sees someone in their truck drives by. And they're like, hey, man, we can help you. Come jump in the truck. And he was like, no, God will save me. I'm going to go upstairs to this upper level. I will be fine. And then the rain keeps coming and the flood is rising. And someone in a boat passes by. And they're like, hey, jump in the boat. We'll help you. We'll save you. They see him in this window, jump out of your window. And he's like, no, I'll be okay. I'm praying God will save me. And then finally it becomes like unbearable and he has to literally climb to the roof of his house. And a helicopter comes and flies over and drops a ladder and says, we grab the ladder, we can save you. I said, no, God will save me. I prayed and I know God will save me. And the water rose so much that he couldn't go anywhere, and he ended up drowning and died. And he goes to heaven and he's like, God, what the heck? I prayed for you to save me. Why didn't you save me? And God said, I sent you a truck. I sent you a boat. I sent you a helicopter. And when my cousin told me that story, it really helped me see that, like, if you're drowning, it's okay to ask for help. You know, I felt very ashamed of where I was, you know, in my life and how much I was struggling. Because again, I really tied it to my self-worth, and I just thought, you know, I'm not a good enough human being. I don't deserve this. And so I don't even deserve somebody's help, you know. And I would ghost people's texts. You know, I just wouldn't even respond to friends' texts or calls because I was so ashamed. I was so embarrassed. You know, if they say, how are you? What's going on? And I would say, nothing. 9 months later, and still nothing is going on. You know, I was so ashamed. So after my cousin told me that story, I was like, okay. And so I reached out to one of the girls that I had become friendly with from the first show. And I told her, look, I really need a job if you know of anyone looking, because she was the same age as me, but she had already been in the industry longer and she knew a lot of people. And so she had found other work. I said, I really need a job. If you hear of anything, could you let me know? And she heard of something and she recommended me, and it was Glee. And they called me. And they called me a week after I finally got a waitressing job. A week after. And I was like, you have no idea how much I want to come work for you. But it was to fill in for somebody for just a couple days. And I was like, you have no idea how badly I want to say yes to you. But I just spent like 8 or 9 months with no job, and I just got this waitressing job a week ago. I don't think I can quit this for just a couple days work, even though I really want to. And so I said, like, if something else comes up longer term, please, please call me. And a month later, they did. And they called me and they said, now we need someone to fill in for the rest of the season. And I gave my notice after a month of waitressing, and I went and worked on Glee.
Because that goes back to that energy shift. And so here you had something. You finally got a waitressing job after, you know, racing down to an open call for one. And then this other one opened up. So that goes back to what you were talking about earlier.
Definitely. I mean, even just getting the waitressing job, it filled me up so much, you know, and not even just self-worth and feeling like, wow, okay, I finally have some money coming in, I can survive, and I have a job. But also being around other people, you know, because I was so afraid to spend money that I wouldn't leave my room. I would stay in my room, in my apartment, like all day, every day. I was afraid to leave because it would cost me money to leave. And I wasn't around people. And so that, I think, also helped to be around people. And, you know, waitressing, you're hustling and walking fast and stuff. So it was getting exercise again and moving my body, you know, all of these things that were beneficial that I think really shifted my energy then to be open for a TV show.
Very interesting. Wow, what a story. So when you got the waitressing job, how did that feel? Because I realized that wasn't your ultimate destination.
No, it wasn't, but I was elated. You know, I just needed something. I hadn't had any work in so long. I was so happy and so grateful to get that waitressing job. Yes.
Wow. Do you ever go back to that restaurant? Well, no, now you probably can't because it's just takeout if it's still around.
Right. Well, so it's funny because it's on the block near where I live, so I could walk there. And I felt so guilty about like leaving after just a month, and I could tell the manager was not happy with me. That on Glee, I was an assistant and I was in charge of getting lunch every day. So I would always say, hey, we should go to this restaurant. And so I gave them business, and we would order from the whole office and order lunch there, and I would go there and pick it up because I wanted to still give them business, you know, because I felt so bad about leaving. And that restaurant was amazing food, so good, but it doesn't exist anymore. And another restaurant is in its place now. That's also a very good restaurant. And I go there when it's open. Yes.
That's a great story.
And even the staff, like the people in the kitchen and the other servers, like some of them I still talk to this day. Some of them went to the restaurant next door, and I always say hi. I get so excited to see them, and it's nice.